Welcome to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset, the leading data and analytics company for the cannabis industry.
Welcome back to the High Rise, a laid-back, data-back conversation where we talk all things cannabis, from U.S. MSOs to Canadian LPs, products and market analysis through the lens of data. My name is Cy Scott with Headset, and I'm joined, as always, by Emily Paxia of Poseidon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the High Rise.
And today is a very special South by Southwest Poolside Session, and we've got a very special guest with Aaron Trahan, Head of Customer Operations at Texas Original, which is a licensed Texas-based vertically integrated operator. One of only three, actually. Welcome, Aaron.
So great to be here.
So good to have you.
Welcome to Austin.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you've been here now a year?
Coming up on a year. Crazy to even say that. We moved here last April, and time's flying.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Has it changed a lot since you've gotten here? I mean, so many people are relocating to the Austin area.
It really is. Even just neighbors that you see kind of moving in. So it's very unique to see your neighbors from Florida, New York, California. The growth is unbelievable. Really, really cool city to be in.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to be here. And I'm really excited to learn all about the Texas cannabis industry from you, since you're so close to it.
Yeah.
And obviously, we know you really well. We've worked together for a long time before the transition to Texas Original. You're actually one of our earliest hires at Headset, I think, as we set up like a division to basically go out to new markets and open up those markets by working with the dispensaries, working with the retailers directly. That's where all the Headset data comes from.
That's right.
So you really spearheaded that. So I think this transition to Texas Original is very similar. It's like a parallel. You're really opening up a new market here. I mean, Texas is the beginning of something, I think, much bigger eventually.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I think it's the very beginning to what should be a very large, dynamic market. And then you just look at the sheer size and population of Texas. You could almost even call it the last frontier of the U.S. cannabis industry. It's one of the last few major markets that's still in such an incredibly early inning stage. Some people even say the innings haven't even started yet. It's such a small market that's evolving and growing almost month by month that there is pretty significant runway ahead.
Yeah, and Aaron, you've been in the space for a long time, so you've actually seen many markets open, and to Cy's point, have also sat in the data position to watch how this goes. But tell us a little bit more about what it was that really attracted you to this group in particular, to Texas Original. Yeah,
it's a great point. I think the almost 4 years I spent at Headset gave me such an incredible perspective to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of different markets, either expanding a medical program, converting a medical program to adult use, new countries launching. It was great being in Canada on day one of their federal adult use program getting off the ground. And, a bit about my story. I was born and raised in Texas. So seeing even the earlier days of Colorado and Washington legalizing, that was almost taboo to speak about in Texas, back in 2014, 2015, Emily, when I met you in Morgan, and just even being able to talk about what you guys were doing, it just wasn't, you couldn't say those things in a lot of circles here in Texas. And so there was such a social stigma that, let's be honest, still exists. It's not gone away, but the adoption and the open-minded kind of flexibility that you're seeing across Texas is dramatically changed. And so if we went back to 2015 and you told me that I'd be sitting here talking to you guys in Austin, working for a Texas-based vertically integrated operator, I couldn't have even put that into terms that would have been a realistic opportunity. And so to be a part of my home state where I was born and raised, to then help change the minds and change the perspectives, burst the stigmas that exist through everything that we're doing to kind of bring medical cannabis to a growing patient population is just, it's almost surreal. So it's been great. That's what kind of led me to the opportunity and, quite frankly, the challenge to be a part of making this a real legitimate growing industry here in the state.
Yeah, it's interesting because we actually have a lot of investors who are from Texas, and some people are like, oh, really? Not as many as, like, I'm like more than from California, actually. Wow. It's really interesting. And one of the profiles I've noticed about folks down here, and a lot of them are in Houston and Dallas, and then of course in this area too, is I think there's a really pioneering mindset here, and you can see how first of all, it's a commodities state with oil and gas and everything, and then also an ag state, and so I think there's also just this pioneering mindset of getting in front of things and really going for it, and not being as kind of fearful or kind of waiting to see what happens like I see in other markets. So it's just a really interesting state from that standpoint, especially because, to your point, there is still a lot of stigma around it, but I think there's also just an openness to thinking about things in that way, and I think it's really interesting.
So 1 of 3 operators. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the framework in Texas, because it's quite unique, right?
It's very unique and still largely undeveloped. I mean, we're expecting a lot of evolution to the regulatory environment to come in the years ahead, but I would say the closest lookalike market, there's a lot of similarities with Florida. So forced vertical integration, a license does give you the opportunity to serve the entire state. There's some complications with the regulatory environment. I mean, there's, crazy things that really put a strain operationally. But Emily, as you say this all the time, it also gives the early operators the opportunity to train at altitude. And that's kind of what we absolutely feel like we're doing, because we're having to do things that probably prevents a lot of other companies to want to move in, to have to operate under these type of regulatory conditions with so small of a patient population. Even though it's growing, you just can't build a profitable business overnight with only 20,000 patients. So we're able to, instead of viewing that as a downside, kind of view that as an opportunity and upside to say, how do we build a business, optimize the business, scale the business under these conditions that gives us a big lead in the state, and being able to serve the entire state, which is really, really difficult. And that's kind of what we're looking to do. And so we're optimizing everything from temporary dispensing sites, partnering with physicians across the state to give patients more access to product. We've got a fleet of delivery vehicles that we're able to deliver in any corner of this state within 5 to 6 days. And that's a huge feat and huge accomplishment, especially considering that, El Paso is the halfway point between Houston and Los Angeles, and there's a lot of ground to cover. But as one of only 3 license holders, there's a ton of responsibility that comes with that. We don't have the opportunity to sit back and say, we're just going to focus on Austin. We're just going to focus on Dallas. If we're going to be a leader in the state and set that bar as the gold standard, we have to treat patients, whether it's the very northern tip of the Panhandle, the very western tip in El Paso, just like we're treating local patients here in Austin. And so we've got to build a business that does that in a timely manner, efficient manner, and continue to optimize on a day in, day out basis, whether it's pickups, whether it's deliveries, really meeting the customers where they're at.
It's so interesting for folks who are listening. I'm reminded of the early days in Canada, to your point, the early days in Florida, where you are doing the heavy lifting to help pull physicians along, to help increase patient counts, to get people more access to cannabis that need it and should have access to it. But it does, I remember being in a FRIA's conference room, and they had a whole program around education and awareness on PTSD, because that was something the government was very supportive of. And I just think about these early days where the operators really are the ones who are creating a market and opening up these pathways. So it's important work, really, in this industry.
Yeah, I think the big word is awareness. And so we have a phenomenal sales team that's out there day in and day out working with physicians, looking for opportunities to drive awareness and coordination with our marketing team from prospective patients. The word that we use is there's a lot of eligibility curious people out there. Mm-hmm. The qualifying conditions are expanding, but still very limited. Luckily, in September of last year, all cancers and PTSD were able to become qualifying conditions in the program, which really helped drive an increase in the patient numbers. But still, a lot of people aren't aware of that and how medical cannabis can help them. And that's both from a consumer standpoint as well as physicians, because physicians aren't immune to the, let's just say that the social stigma that comes around, cannabis legalization. So there's education on both fronts, the inbound dependency that we have with physicians, but also the consumers, even making them aware of the opportunity of how the program can help either change or improve the quality of their life if they have those qualifying conditions.
Yeah. I mean, even California, my doctor, she fully judged me for my cannabis consumption. And I was like, we were kind of doing the like run through, like, how many drinks do you have a week? And do you consume any other drugs? And I was like, do you consider cannabis a drug? And she was like, yes. And I like kind of gave her my profile, and she's like, oh, I mean, have you thought about your cannabis use? I'm like, I just told you I take a hit of a vape pen like 3 nights a week and take tinctures. And she was like, and I was like, did you hear how many drinks I told you I have a week? I'm like, the paradox around that is really still amazing to me. And especially in California, in San Francisco, where we've had a medical market since 1996, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's just really wild that we're still there.
It is, but at the same time too, what's so motivating to kind of get you in the office first thing in the morning and just do the hard work that as an early license holder, having to set up, having to drive the awareness, having to kind of build the industry, you hear the patient stories and you actually hear the results of how cannabis has dramatically improved the lives of whether it's small children, whether it's someone who's been battling cancer. We have a big veteran population here in the state. So, with PTSD, I've had the opportunity to kind of get out there and make some deliveries myself, just kind of understanding the process and optimizing the process. And it's every opportunity I get, I jump on it because I want to do it just to be able to hear these stories and see the impact. And so anybody in our company, if they ever need any motivation, we just need to throw them on the delivery route and go talk to patients because the stories are so incredibly invigorating just to see the impact that the product's able to have on patients in need and how it can really transform the quality of their life. It's so incredibly rewarding.
It never gets old.
And that's what seems to drive an industry, those stories, right? As those stories get out and people hear those stories, I think it helps push things forward.
That's right.
So in Texas, you guys don't have any like brick and mortar footprint, do you? It's delivery. Is that how it gets to the patients?
So that's where it started. Was Texas launched this program and says, yeah, congratulations, you got a license. Now you got to figure out how to get it to a lot of different people across the state. But that's changing. So we do have the ability to set up pickup locations. We now have 12 open and operating temporary dispensing sites across the state. And that allows customers, we usually like to partner with a qualifying physician where customers are already going there to get their prescriptions. So we kind of bring a pickup pop-up location directly to them at the physician's office. And so that's dramatically helped expand patient accessibility. And because of the growing size of the market and growing patient population, we actually just announced this morning we're opening our first full-time dispensary pickup location in Houston.
Amazing.
Wow.
So it's all around our strategic initiative that we want to lead the market with patient accessibility. Easy to say, very difficult to do, but just another step forward of putting our money where our mouth is to make sure we're going to be the gold standard in leading product availability and patient accessibility throughout the state, not just focused in the major metro markets. So we're going to be doing more of all things. We're constantly looking to increase delivery capability and capacity, opening up more than just the 12 we have today of temporary dispensing sites, and going ahead and making the early investment to set up full-time pickup locations that will have an exact look, feel, and vibe of a high-integrity, highly consultative retail experience. So when the time comes and we're able to do things that are normal in other markets, like store inventory overnight and do those type of things, we want to be in a position to be able to execute on that new expanded regulatory environment day one, minute one, second one, versus then starting the process of building up a retail network. So we're going to have a large footprint through all of those delivery, temporary dispensing sites, and full retail locations. Expect more news on that almost on a monthly basis as we start making the investments and opening these locations.
Cool. Would you mind, just for my sake and also for the listeners, running through kind of the potency limits, any caps on that, the form factors that are legal, and then I'm curious if you have different brands within the organization, or if it's just all Texas Original. So just wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we'll tackle those for sure. So first on the branding aspect, right now everything's branded, Texas Original. We're still kind of early days. There's a lot of conversations we're having of exploring what could sub-brands look like for different types of product categories, but there is a THC cap that we're having to abide by with the regulations. And the way the cap is, and there's a lot of misconception here, is like, well, if you have a THC cap, that means you can only have a certain amount of milligrams of THC in a product, when actually the THC cap is by weight on the finished good. Yeah. So it prevents us from going deep into some categories today where we have to focus on kind of current categories because of that. So the products we offer are gummies, lozenges or hard candies, and tinctures. Those are kind of the three major product formats. So you're probably thinking, it's like, wow, we're not able to participate in the flower and vape category yet, but with every single legislative cycle, we're expecting enhancements to things like THC caps, things like qualifying conditions. So we truly believe this is the early days where we're not participating in an expanded market. We have a lot of hopes on that changing fairly dramatically in the legislative session next year. And so things like the THC cap getting lifted, that would allow us to make a bigger push and to bring flower and vape to market, fingers crossed, but that's kind of what we're hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, this is how these things have to happen, especially in a state like Texas. You've got to tiptoe into them.
Yeah, the crawl, walk, run kind of approach.
Exactly.
And so it's also forces us to be careful of who we partner with, because there's some groups out there that don't understand that crawl, walk, run approach, and they're just banging the drum saying we need to legalize for adult use today. And it's just like, well, that's clearly not going to happen. And so let's figure out how we can, make the right compromises, provide the right information, show the testimonies of how this is impacting a lot of the constituents that these politicians have. And yeah, let's figure out how we can expand this responsibly to get everybody comfortable. That just allows us to serve more and more patients that are entering the program, which is absolutely happening at a pretty high clip month over month.
Yeah. Sai, you and I talk about this all the time. We're so impatient as an industry. It's like there has been so much progress. The fact that you even have an operating company in Texas is like something, to your point, I didn't think it would be happening this quickly when we first got into this, and like New York opening, all these things that are happening. We should really just be like, wow, this is all happening, and we can just be a little more patient.
This industry and the businesses within the industry move so incredibly fast.
So fast.
You're so right. Sometimes we do just need to hit the pause button, zoom out a little bit, and look at things more on 2, 4, 6 year horizons. And back to how we opened. 5-6 years ago, I never would imagine I would be able to do this in Texas. It just seemed like it was something that was happening everywhere else and will never happen here. But yeah, things can change, and with this industry, typically change pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for pushing it ahead here and leading the charge, because whichever way Texas goes, the country goes, as it's said. So fingers crossed.
Lots of fingers crossed. Yeah, absolutely.
So Aaron, where can people find more information on Texas Original?
Yeah, they can go directly to our website at texasoriginal.com. I mean, we are definitely taking a education first approach. It's just a major pillar in the awareness campaign. And so we want to educate the general public on not just our company, but more on the Texas market, how the Texas market is evolving, what's available in Texas, how can the legal medical cannabis market in Texas help you. So we're definitely taking an education first approach. I think our website's a great place to start, get a good foundation of the Texas market, and go from there.
Well, it's so great to have you at our South by Poolside session, and looking forward to doing it again soon.
So glad to be here.
Thanks for listening to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.